Memory transcript subject, Sylvan, Vinlil civilian date. Standardized human time. October 17th, 2136, and you're absolutely sure you're qualified for something like this? Yes, absolutely. I stared over at my interviewee, a deafening silence permeating in the small room as he waited for me to ask another question. Instead of thinking of one to ask it, the only questions I could think up at the moment were ones directed at me. These questions looped over and over in my mind, wondering how exactly I got myself into this situation and how exactly I was going to get out. It was a simple job posting for an extra pair of paws to help me around my restaurant. I had injured my back a few weeks beforehand and simply couldn't handle the stress of having to run the place by myself anymore. Age-wise, I was still in my prime, but the amount of effort needed to put into my work every day would wear down even the more hardy Venlil. So, despite how much I shrilled at the idea of needing to split the store profits up, I conceded to the fact that I needed some help. Despite hanging up a number of posters and throwing a couple of ads around on the Venlil internet, I hadn't really received any takers in over 2 weeks. That was until one person walked through my doors not even 20 minutes ago, looking for a job. You're sure? I asked again, trying to keep my calm as best I could, despite what every nerve in my body were screaming at me. Sir, if you don't mind me saying, that's the 4th time you've asked me. I'm starting to think you don't believe me. I stared forward again silently at the predator across from me. It had a slight tannish pink skin with little to no fur on it besides at the top of its head, a sight that would make me think it suffered some sort of hair loss disease. A loose, awkward-looking collection of its clothing surrounded a large surface area of its body as well, which did little to obstruct the terrifying bulge of muscles that prodded out of both its arms and chest. A human. It was absolutely massive, and would stand at almost twice my height if it wasn't sitting down at the moment, its legs scrunched up under the Venlil-sized table in an uncomfortable, almost comical fashion. I tried to keep my focus on that instead of looking at its face, which currently was obstructed by a metallic visor over its eyes and a mask over its mouth. Although I couldn't see its face clearly through the obstructions, I couldn't help but imagine its piercing, forward-facing eyes dig into my very soul as it sat there, along with what I assumed to be giant incisors ready to rip apart and rend my flesh at any given moment. I gulped, trying to bring myself back into focus. Just a little bit more until it would be acceptable to kick this monster out of my restaurant without it being able to claim discrimination. I silently cursed Governor Tarva for her insane policies revolving these murder machines. Well, it would be a very tough job. You'd have to work an entire 5-hour shift with only 3 breaks. I don't think an ambush predator like yourself would be able to handle it, I said, knowingly bumping it up by an extra hour in an attempt to scare it off. The human tilted its head a bit, which instantly made me recoil in fear. Was this some kind of aggressive motion? Had I offended it? I squealed a bit as I pushed myself further back into my chair, my heart racing as each second took hours to pass. Only 5 hours? With 3 breaks? I am applying for a full-time position, right? All right, I said nervously, being glad the predator hadn't lurched forward at my insult and attacked me yet. Oh, that's strange. It is? I gulped, hoping that my exaggerated asking hours were having its effect. Yeah, normal full-time hours for human jobs is 8 hours with 3 breaks. Though if I'm being honest, back at my old restaurant I used to put in 10 to 12 because of the constant rush. Barely even got to use any of my breaks most days as well. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The human was barely even fazed by my ridiculous offer. 10 to 12 hours. In a week, right? No? In a day. It got pretty stressful sometimes, but I can't say I can complain about doing what I love. That's why I'm so glad that I found your ad. Ever since I got on that refugee ship, I just haven't felt the same. I just want to be behind the kitchen doors feeding the hungry masses, you know? Everything that I was hearing was absurd. How can any creature in the universe, much less a predator, have so much stamina? It was either they aimed to deceive me for some kind of ulterior goal, or they were telling the truth. Either option scared me. Well, that's quite impressive. Very, very impressive. My voice couldn't help but trail off as I dreaded over how my plan to scare off the predator had failed. It even seemed like it was excited about the prospect of working that long. If I was able to keep the restaurant open that long every day, then maybe I could. No, 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 no. Don't even entertain the idea of actually hiring this beast. Sylvan, what would your mother think if she could see you like this? Ahem. I clear my throat, trying one last gambit. Unfortunately, this restaurant caters to Venlo customers only, and as I'm sure you know, a meat eater like yourself wouldn't be able to understand our palate, much less cook food for us. Now I got this human right where I wanted it. Its slow brain must be finally catching on to the fact that it's in the wrong place. Now I just have to hope it won't become enraged and take its frustration out on me. Oh, that shouldn't be a problem. That same old restaurant I chefed at is actually famous for being completely vegan. One of the oldest in Marinucci, actually, which really made it stand out among the rest of the shops on the street. Vegan? The word doesn't appear to be translating correctly. It read as lacking the use of any meat or animal products, which can't be right. No, that's correct. But you're a predator. Why would you eat this thing called vegan? Does that not go against everything you are? The human began making a series of loud, guttural rumbling noises, which made my hair stand up on all ends. My heart rate skyrocketed again, and my paws instinctively clutched the chair I sat in. The predator continued this noise for a few seconds before noticing my reaction and promptly ceased its assault on my ears. Sorry. I just found what you said funny. I didn't mean to scare you with my laugh. It seemed like the human was suppressing the urge to continue their laugh, with varying success as a few small peeps snuck through anyways. It's just, well, first of all, vegan is a cooking style, not a physical thing. Second, humans are omnivorous and don't need to eat meat to survive as long as they have a few supplements to stay healthy. Hell, I can't even remember the last time I had fish, or any meat for that matter. There were so many things to process at once. That was what a human laugh was. I had read about it in some of the bits of human media shared with my planet when the Vinlil made first contact, but honestly I hadn't imagined a sound that was supposed to express joy could sound so terrifying. Perhaps when this human decided to tear me to pieces for a small snack, it would make the same sound of joy at the idea of a fresh kill. Wait. I started again as the other parts of the human's comments struck me. You can't remember the last time you ate fish? Or any meat? When was the last time you ate? The horror struck me at once. I had no idea the scope of how starving this predator might be. I could already imagine its fangs protruding out of a pool of saliva under that face mask. This morning. Or, well, I guess it might have been closer to the afternoon. Still not exactly sure how to tell time on this planet. Regardless, right after I woke up and ate some pickled bamboo shoots over rice, like I do most days. What kind of animal is a bamboo? I thought you said you hadn't eaten? And what is a rice? Bamboo is a very large kind of grass on Terra, so big some think it's a kind of tree. It's cut up, fermented, and is pretty popular where I am from. Rice is a kind of grain that grows all over Terra in different varieties. Most days I eat white rice, but on special occasions I like to eat red rice. So you're saying they're not animals, no. Like I said, humans are omnivorous, so we can choose whether or not we eat meat. For me especially, while I'm not exactly vegan, I'm so used to the food that I don't really mind going without meat for a long time. I decided that I'd stop eating meat for however long I'm on Venlo Prime so that I can make friends here easier and also set a good example. Honestly not sure if I'll even switch back once this whole Federation scare blows over and the UN says we can go home. I shifted uncomfortably at this revelation. Predators that can choose to not eat meat? The very idea still boggles the mind to even consider. I thought about Governor Tarva's reckless actions so far. Pulling out of the Federation, protecting these barbaric creatures from being exterminated, and risking the lives of every Vinlil on this planet to an Arxer raid just so she could trick her populace into believing that some predators could mean well? Up until this point, I had spat at the idea of being partnered to these creatures, made even worse when they began coming to Vinlil Prime and its colonies in droves to escape the possibility of a Federation destroyer from attacking Terra. Now they roamed the streets, and I had sworn that Governor Tarva had gone mad with some kind of disease to let any of this happen, or was at least getting threatened by the humans in some way. Still, I had to admit that so far the humans' reputation of being peaceful had been held up as far as I knew. It had only been a couple months since their first contact, and no Vinlil had died by human hands so far. Well, not publicly, at least. Not to mention, the tests concerning their capability for empathy had come back fairly promising. I'm not the kind of Vinlil that would ignore evidence right in front of my face, and then make a bunch of opinions about something I had no knowledge of. My mother had always taught me to be a realist. After all, how do you expect to run a successful business if you can't give your own mind a little breathing room and try to understand things from a logical perspective? Despite everything my instincts were telling me, I tried to give the situation the benefit of the doubt. Internally, my scarred prey instincts were fighting a more brutal war against my logical reasoning than the entire Federation Armada could even hope to match. And as I spoke again, I could feel the latter half finally begin to take over. Alrighty then. I assume you'll just want to work until you can go back to where you're from, right? I don't know where this Marinuccia is, but I'm sure it's absolutely lovely, and you must miss it a lot. So, once it's safe, you won't need to be here longer than you have to. I suppose not, the human said, with a tone of voice that made me realize it might be slightly catching on to how much I didn't want it to be here. But too bad, even if he backed out, despite how much neither of us would want to be around each other. I had already decided to give this freak of nature a chance. My logical, realist side brimmed just barely over my prey instincts, in such a way that I hoped my mother would be proud of me for taking her lessons to heart, wherever she was. Well then, I said, hopping out of the chair. I guess we'll go on to the next part of our interview. The human followed suit and stood upright, its head towering over my own. I had to suppress my urges to run away from it all over again as I stared up at the hulking giant above me. I gulped one more time and slowly stuck out a paw, remembering the human gesture of goodwill that I had read about some time prior. My name is Sylvan, and I'm the owner and sole employee of the Lackadaisy Diner. Thankfully, the gesture seemed to have worked, as the human matched my act, sticking out a massive, meaty hand towards my paw. I shut my eyes, expecting it to be crushed within seconds, but instead was relieved to feel the most gentle grip I could have imagined wrap around my paw. I'm Kenta. Really glad you're deciding to give me a chance. You won't regret it. A light, yet unstoppable force moved my paw up and down a few times. Another strange motion the human did at the time was seemingly bowing its upper torso up and down as they shook appendages. I thought this was some kind of intimidation tactic, like it was about to pounce on me at any moment, but as a random gamble, I decided instead to mimic that motion as well, which the human seemed to be happy about. Mentally patting myself on the back for my bravery, I continued seeing where this would go. Why don't you go ahead and show me some of this vegan human food you seem to be so proud of? The mask on the human's face moved a bit, and I assumed that it might be one of those terrifying smiles I had heard so much about. I'd love that,